on Guys Be Flattened here with a brand new build video today. We're going to be revisiting Malicious Melee Amara, so let's get right into it. So Malicious Melee Amara we had in the past was a primarily red and green tree. This one's a little bit different because of new comms and new items and new things to work with. This one is more going to be focused on green-blue with a little bit of red investment. So let's get right into it, shall we? So first off on the list we have steady hands for weapon handling and accuracy. This is going to be for our face puncher, so we can have a closer in range so that we don't miss a lot of our shots, just so that we can have more of the 390 hit, and for white elephants to proc more sticky bombs as well. Infusion and enema is just to move down the tree. You don't really need them. Tempest is here for elemental damage and shock damage in case we're using any shock stones or static charges. Tempest is going to be really good for melting off shields if we need it, mostly in the Guardian takedown and enemies with high caliber shields. And lastly, Illuminated Fist in the red tree. Amara gains melee damage, and her melee damage is converted to her action steal element. So melee damage will always be whatever melee or whatever element that we have as our action steal. So infusion isn't really needed, but infusion is also worthwhile to have if you're using weapons other than the face puncher and other than melee damage. So it will convert to your action steal element. However, Illuminated Fist will do that all for you if you're just going to be sticking strictly to melee damage. Very good skill. We have 3 points into this from the new class mod in DLC 4. We'll cover that in just a second. I'm using Allure specifically with this build because Allure is going to be dragging enemies into a big circle so that you can singularity affect all the enemies whenever we use our phase grasp. That way we can have like a good nice pile of enemies for whenever we throw our fish slap that'll bounce around and proc Groundbreaker multiple times off of those enemies. It's also good to gather up enemies like this with the face puncher so you can proc more sticky bombs with your white elephants. It makes it so that you can mob very easy. Into our green tree, you can choose Blight Tiger, you can choose shock damage, or you can choose Soulfire. You have options of all 3 different types of elements in case you need them. So that's the other augment that I'm currently using. So I'm using Root to Rise for HP. I'm using Personal Space for 54% damage if I'm really close to an enemy. You walk right up to an enemy, point the barrel of the face puncher in their face, and then you fire it. 54% of that damage is going to be coming through. I'm using Clarity and Helping Hands just for damage reduction and some regen of HP. It's not too bad. It also helps us move down the tree a little bit more. Arms Deal for reduction of splash damage. We're not really using splash damage on this build, but the reduction of splash damage is nice, especially if you're like slaughter shafts or things like that, where rockets are firing everywhere. You can have that tankiness. Mindfulness, whenever we take damage we get movement speed so that we can move around faster, and we also have Speed Demon as well, just in case that we need the extra movement. We're not using a Snowdrift on this build, so any type of movement is nice. Find Your Center. Find Your Center is basically just here for the melee range and the melee damage. That's all you really need it for. One with Nature for elemental damage resist and maximum HP. The elemental damage reduction is nice just to make yourself a little bit more tanky in the battlefield, since we're going to be running around and punching and shooting enemies with melee damage and all that stuff. Guardian Angel, every 2 minutes you get a free get out of fight for your life free card. It's great. Do Unto Others. This is a new skill that I've been playing around with, and it's going to be in conjunction with other things. So this one is whenever we take damage, we throw an energy orb back at that enemy that it does our attuned elemental damage action skill. It has an 8-second cooldown. It does damage. It's pretty nice. Whenever we take damage, we just throw orbs back at them. This will also help for things like Groundbreaker, so that we can add more damage to whatever enemy we're going to be throwing multiple melee hits over to. Blitz is great. Blitz is more melee damage, and you also do elemental melee damage for it as well. You can also proc this in Fight for Your Life. So if you're in Fight for Your Life and you try to melee, you'll have like a little rush attack that'll come through with the Blitz procking, so you can close in the gap a little bit further if you're a little far away from an enemy or one decides to run away from you. It's a great skill, multi-purpose, has melee damage on top of it. And finally our blue tree. Fast hands for reload speed. The more you're firing your face puncher, the more that you're staying alive and the more that you're killing things. Reloading that as quickly as possible is excellent. Violent tapestry and do harm just to move down the tree. There's no purpose. Alacrity for reload speed. Whenever we consume stacks of rush, we get reload speed on top of our fast hands. The more that you fire the face puncher, the more that you're killing things and the more that you're staying alive. It's great. Restless reaction skill cooldown. The more that we're grabbing enemies, the more control of the battlefield we have, the more lure procs we have, so that we can gather enemies up for mobbing purposes even more so. From rest for fire rate. Again, this is just in conjunction with the reload speed and the face puncher. The more that we're firing, the more that we're reloading the face puncher and shooting, we kill enemies and stuff like that. Laid bear, max points, and you also get 2 points from our new comm. Enemies take an increased damage from all sources after being damaged by Amara's action skill. So whenever we use a phase grasp or whenever we hit an enemy with an action skill, they're taking increased damage by 41% extra. This is going to have a 8-second cooldown, and it's really good for single target fighting whenever we clear off mobs and shit. And finally, Remnant. Whenever Amara kills an enemy with a gun or action skill, there's a homing projectile that goes out and seeks that enemy for the action skill damage. Overkill is added to it. This includes Groundbreaker and things like that. We're throwing orbs. Orbs are coming everywhere with things like Do Unto Others and Remnant, and our class mod is also going to be sending out orbs as well. So let's get into our skills and gear, shall we? I have Backburners, Hyperfocus, and Butcher for no reason whatsoever. I just sell them and have them equipped. You don't need those at all. The only thing you really need is the Face Puncher. This one's a 14 times 390. As long as you're doing damage to enemies with over 90% of their HP, you're doing 300% increased weapon damage. There's 14 pellets on this thing. With fast hands, or not fast hands, sorry, with steady hands, the pellet count is going to be having a little bit of a smaller reticle, so you have a better chance of hitting targets. It's great. Brawler's Word, like we had from Malicious Melee Amara. I'm going to have a little sticker card or link somewhere on the video so that you guys can check out the old gear and the old skill trees. Because if you don't want to stick with this one's focused more on damage. If you want to stick with the elemental tree from the last video, I will link it somewhere so you can have that full list. And you'll see why that is there in just a second once we get to our artifacts. So Brawler's Word and the Fish Slaps are the same from the last video. Cryo, Shock, non-elemental, and also Corrosion. So we have all different types of damage to hit. The Knife Drain, White Elephant. This one's coming with melee damage, and this one's also coming with action skill cooldown rate. White Elephant, just like before, melee attacks attach sticky bombs at 30% chance. And Knife Drain, whenever we're doing melee, we automatically heal. If you don't want to be hard stuck to a Knife Drain, I will link the other video like I said. It works off of using Sustainment and also having Infusion or Illuminated Fist, so that whenever you shoot your face puncher, you heal for that, so you can use a more variety of artifacts. However, I've also done some extensive testing. The other artifacts that we have in here, you don't necessarily need it because we have of all the... We don't necessarily need the Knife Drain at all times. We can use a good variety still, even if we don't have that healing. Because of Helping Hands, Clarity, and all of our damage reduction skills, it really piles up together so you can be more of a tank. There's a few new added ones in here from the last time. We have Corrosive Stone White Elephant with corrosion damage, Knife Drain White Elephant with melee damage, Radiation Stone Static Charge. This is going to be swinging for radiation and shock damage. This one's a personal favorite of mine, the Shock Stone Static Charge. So we do shock damage, and the static charge will chain shock all around to enemies that are nearby. Shreds shields. Cut Purse, so that you can get your ammo back. Cut Purse White Elephant, so you can get your ammo back. Shock Stone White Elephant, if you want to do shock and sticky bombs. Radiation Stone White Elephant, radiation and sticky bombs. Tons of different artifacts to choose from, and that's going to change how your melee damage interacts with. And finally, the thing that brings this entire build together is one of the new class mods from the DLC, DLC 4, Psycho Krieg. This is the Muse comm. So whenever Mara damages an enemy with a melee attack, you don't have to kill, you just have to damage. You send out an orb of melee damage. outwards towards an enemy with the whatever attuned element you have. So if you're choosing Blight Tiger, it's Corrosion. If you have nothing, it's Shock. And if you have Soulfire, it's Fire. And it goes and homes in towards another nearby enemy. This skill has a very short cooldown. You can proc it like every 5 to 8 seconds. There's melee damage attached to this as well, which is great. You're going to be constantly sending out melee orbs everywhere. So we have Do Unto Others, and then we have Remnant, and then we have the Muse-Com just sending orbs out that are also going to be doing all this mobbing for you while you're doing your own thing. Lastly, to keep in mind, we have Groundbreaker. Groundbreaker's melee attacks and slam will trigger an aftershock, dealing 25% of all non-melee damage you have dealt over the last 5 seconds. So last time in the last video, we had the Brawler's Ward. Now the Brawler's Ward, we had a way of proccing an elemental dot on us with the driver comm to pop the Brawler's Ward quickly. We don't have that option in here. So, because we don't have that option, we have the level 1 Brawler's Ward. We have to wait for either an enemy to shoot us once to break it, which is easy on Mayhem 10, it's just going to break instantly. But there's also barrels that can do it for us. If any sort of like dot damage that we take, this thing's going to break instantly. So having the drivers come to self-break it wasn't really necessary, it just helped for engagements of combat. So let's do a little bit of testing. You saw a little bit at the beginning of the video. Let's do a little bit of testing here. So we swing, and look at that. We take one shot, we lose our Brawler's Ward. There was a 33 million Remnant orb. I actually can't tell if this is Remnant anymore or if this is the Muse-Com. We throw our fish, we're one-shotting enemies. We're not even matching elements. I'm using Corrosion right now because of Blight Tiger. If we were matching elements with these guys, there would be even more overkill coming through with Remnant. There's a one-shot. There's a one-shot with the homing orbs. Two-shot on that guy. If you're not one-shotting an enemy, your orbs will generally either finish the job or it'll one-shot another random enemy that is unfortunate to come within walking distance of you. Now, we don't have our Brawler's Ward broken, so this is going to take a little bit longer. There's a fish slap for one, and there's a homing orb that killed him because of the Muse-Com. He gets one shot. Okay, we have some shield going. Guardian Angel is always going to be a nice protection for us. With our Knife Drain, any sort of melee attack that we do, we are automatically going to heal back up to full. We're just doing so much damage that we're going to be, at the very least, tripling plus what our maximum HP is. Now, you have to be careful with the fish slap there, as it's a good example. You have to be careful with the fish slap, because if the fish slap hits you, you're going to go down in one fish slap hit. It's just going to do millions upon millions of damage, and you're not going to be able to out-heal it at all. Two shots on that guy. There's a Muse-Com coming in. Kills him. Here's a badass. He blows up because of the white elephant. We're sending out an orb. We're sending out another orb. There's another orb. The homing orbs is the thing that's going to make the mobbing so much easier. Notice that all these mobbing phases, I have never once used my Phase Grasp. Phase Grasp is just a eliminate an enemy out of the combat free card, if you will. Allure is also pretty nice, like we were discussing earlier. We can drag enemies into the fight so that we can make it easier for our orbs to seek out. We can have it so that our Face Puncher hits multiple enemies. Fish Slap can bounce around and hit multiple enemies far easier if they're all gathered up like that. But you don't really need your action skill if you don't want it. It's just there as a nice little support asset. It's not something to rely off of. Before, we were using Indiscriminate with chains, and that was causing a lot of damage. This time around, you don't really need it. Now, this build, just like the previous Malicious Melee Amara that you guys have seen, It has done Guardian takedown. It has done Malawan takedown on both normal and true versions, so you will be able to go through any piece of content with this build with ease. And of course, this is both versions as well. This is 1.0 version that you guys can see with the old skill tree, and this is also the 2.0 version, which was what we're using now. Let's show off another one of my favorite artifacts, the Shockstone Static Charge. So we come in with a slide, we charge up our electricity here, we use our thing, our action skill. He took chains there, he's automatically dead. Chains are coming through. Chains, and you're still one-shotting everything. I turned around and that guy got one shot. Shock damage goes to him, chains to him. It's another one of my favorites. I think I hit death there. I didn't even see Beans come here. Now remember, this entire time we were not matching elements. So everything that you're seeing getting one shot here, this is not matching elements. We've been using corrosion damage this entire time. Corrosion against shields and corrosion against flesh primarily. There's been a few armored enemies, but for the most part it's been corrosive versus shields and corrosive versus HP, which doesn't do super effective damage as, say, shock on shields or fire on flesh. You're pretty much going to be one-shotting enemies. And there's one more thing I should let you guys in on. When you're doing this build specifically, you want to turn shield reboot off. Now the reason why you want to turn shield reboot off is because killing an enemy triggers shield regen. We have the Brawler's Ward. We need the Brawler's Ward broken at all times. Because we're sending out orbs upon orbs, hitting multiple enemies, multiple places, and multiple times. We have white elephants proccing, we have fish slaps bouncing around. We're constantly killing enemies. The more enemies that we kill, the more that we're triggering shield regen, and we don't want our shield to regen on the Brawler's Ward. So just disabling that perk itself is perfectly fine and amazing to do, because you want to have the Brawler's Ward broken at all times and you don't want it to regen. So turning that off will make a substantial change to this build, especially when you're doing your action skill and whiffs with melee damage and the 300% on top of that. You want that constantly procced for you in this melee build. I think that's gonna do it all for me. Like I said, if you want to see the original 1.0 build, I will link it somewhere in the video, probably in the description as well, so you can check out the elemental version of this. Or if you just want the raw damage that throws orbs around like we were playing around with just now, this is the build here. It's a lot of fun. Save file downloads are going to be in Discord as always, and I'll see you guys in the next build. My name is B-Flat, and guys, I'm signing on out of here. Take care, all.